think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Level Show, where we think, act, and prosper. Today, we're going to look more and deeper into the energy underinvestment. I've talked about energy a lot. I've done a few live videos on it, talking about how I believe that energy stocks are going to continue to stay elevated for a while. Right now, they're currently still undervalued. Some people still think inflation is transitory. The Fed still has a target of 2% inflation, and there's a lot of people on Wall Street that still believe that inflation will be at 2%. However, we have to look at the micro of energy and look at how much investment is actually going into energy so that we can begin to understand, okay, this is why the energy price is probably most likely going to stay higher for a longer period of time. So let's go ahead and dive into that. All right. So first, I've showed you all the Inflation Reduction Act, which it talks about. This act is pretty much was introduced for them to be able to lower costs for Americans. And a lot of it's focused on putting more money towards clean energy. There's nothing in here that states that they want to fund fossil fuels or how to get more supply online from either oil or natural gas companies, building pipelines, transporting, all those different things. So we know that politicians aren't even fully behind this. Politicians aren't like making this easier for fossil fuel producers and drillers or whatnot to be able to bring more supply online. So they're actually introducing bills that are just focused on clean energy. So that's one factor that just shows like, okay, well, we don't even have our own politicians behind it so that we can increase supply and reduce the cost. So that just shows me that supply is still going to be tight and that the prices are still going to be elevated. Also, looking at the debasement of the currency, we know that gas prices always have a new equilibrium. I mean, it went from 25 cents a gallon to now it's at $4 or $5 a gallon. I think that it's going to settle and be at a specific price. I mean, depending on where you live, but it could be at $4.50 going forward, just because the currency is debased and there's not enough. So that just goes to show that there's not a lot of investment in the energy space, especially if you don't have your politicians behind bringing more supply online to reduce the costs for the citizens. So I think that energy prices are going to stay higher. That's one reason. All right, so this article right here, it's from the UN Environment Program. It says, as oil prices spike, new investments in fossil fuels could be disastrous. So, I mean, you have articles coming out talking about how investing in fossil fuels will be disastrous for the people. Energy security is in the spotlight as many countries seek to reduce their reliance on foreign fossil fuels due to rising fuel prices spiked by the war in Ukraine and the resulting geopolitical uncertainty. Yet, as the recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report shows, existing and planned fossil fuel projects will push the world beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, so producing more fossil fuels could be a recipe for disaster. With oil prices at their highest in nearly a decade, several oil-producing countries have increased fossil fuel production, which United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says will only make matters worse in the long run. The use of strategic stockpiles and additional reserves could help to ease the energy crisis in the short term, but experts say countries must push for transformational change, progressively phasing out coal and other fossil fuels and accelerating the deployment of renewable energy. So as you can see, like, politicians on the global stage are not behind bringing more supply online. They're not behind putting money behind fossil fuels or these companies to be able to bring more supply online. However, if you look at, how many people actually use fossil fuels, I mean, it's a ton. It's a ton of people. Like, majority of the people in the world use fossil fuels. I mean, clean energy is just a blip on the radar with that. And so they're not putting, investment behind this. So I believe that these commodities, are going to go higher. Let's look at the S&P 500. All right. So the S&P 500, even looking at their top performers, Chevron is one of their top ones. Then you have Freeport, McMoran, which is they produce gold and copper. And then you have companies like Occidental, which produces oil as well. You look at those companies and those are the top performers. That's because the price of oil is doing good, right? So let's look at the SPY ETF. So this is an ETF based off the S&P 500, and energy only makes up 4.33% of this sector of the SPY. I mean, technology makes up 24%, healthcare 15%, financial and consumer cyclical 12 and 10%. So, I mean, energy is getting a very little investment into it. So, looking at, if you're looking at retirement portfolios, a lot of people who have the SPY in their retirement portfolios or whatnot. So, energy is not really in there. I mean, so there's underinvestment, and there's a saying that says the cure for high prices is high prices, because you have to pay high prices so that the oil companies receive more funding to be able to bring more supply online. And right now, a lot of those companies are not wanting to bring supply online because of the uncertainty with the politicians and such. And so, it's just really a catch-22 situation. I mean, and I don't see the price going really down really far unless we have recession. But that's only going to be temporary because people are still going to need these commodities. All right, so now let's look at this site right here. This is an interesting site. It talks about the global energy sector, Capex, which is capital expenditure, means how much investment is actually going into the different sectors or whatnot. So looking at this, they're saying that the global energy sector Capex was over 1.5 trillion in 2021. As it rebounded from COVID, which was 2020, when the pandemic started and energy prices plummeted. And just looking at this, I mean, this just shows like, okay, well, 2020 was a down year. It was pretty low. I mean, it's close to 2016, and this is what they're projecting the capex for energy going forward. And then just even looking at like, for example, fossil fuel generation. So that's this color right here, fossil fuel power generation. I mean, it's a very small amount has been going into fossil fuels. I mean, look at non-hydro renewables, the light blue right here. A lot of more money is going into non-hydro renewables, and they need fossil fuels to be able to mine the materials that they need for non-hydro renewables. And we know that they have been focusing heavily on, solar and wind, which is very weather dependent. And you're seeing a lot of rolling blackouts, things like that. It's not a good source for base load power. And, that's kind of just the situation we're in. And, looking at, even coal mining is down, as well. And even looking over here. So look at this. So you have, upstream capex, non-hydro renewables. This is from 2016 to 2020, the green bar. And then you look at fossil fuel generation. I mean, less than half or about half of what is going into or in renewables, right? And then you look at 2021 to 25. I mean, this just goes even higher. And then you have fossil fuel generation, their investment going lower. And so, same thing, coal mining, they have that increasing. But nuclear is just way back here. I mean, even nuclear is very cheap, and this is a good base load source of power. Let's look at this article. Clean energy boom leaves fossil spending behind as inflation and climate woes weigh. Global investment in clean energy is set to outpace fossil fuel spending this year as uncertainties over future energy demand scenarios keep oil, gas, and coal capital expenditures below levels seen prior to the pandemic in 2019. Led by power sector spending on renewables, grids, and storage, clean energy investment is expected to exceed 1.4 trillion in 2022, accounting for almost 3/4 of the growth in overall energy investment. The IEA said in its World Energy Investment 2022 report. As a result, the annual average growth rate in clean energy investment has now risen to 12%, up from 2% in the wake of 2015 Paris Agreement. At the same time, while oil and gas investment is up 10% from last year, it remains well below 2019 levels, the IEA said, noting that surging energy prices this year have done little to spur additional spending plans for fossil fuels. All right. So, there you have it. I mean, this is just some of the information that I just dug up, just on like, this is why I invest in commodities for the long term. This is why I'm investing in fossil fuels for the long term. And even when I had Rick Rule on, I mean, he talks about, like whenever he sees, more capital coming into, the fossil fuels or coming into the energy sector, then he would consider selling. But right now there's not enough capital coming in, and so therefore the prices are likely going to stay higher because we have 8 billion of us here on the earth, nearly 8 billion of us, and we all need energy. I mean, that's just plain and simple. So comment down below if you drive an electric car. I like to see the ratio of people that drive electric cars. And that's just a factor right there. Like me growing up in the hood, growing up in poverty, nobody's driving an electric car there, so I mean, those are, thousands of people in my neighborhood, it's where I grew up. Like, you hardly see any electric vehicles. So clean energy has a long way to go. That's just my perspective. I am bullish on it long term, but I'm only bullish on nuclear, uranium, and a sustainable clean energy that can actually carry as a base load power. So solar and wind, I'm not fully sold on because, they're very weather dependent. So leave your comment down below. Let me know what you think. I just love to engage with you all. So be sure to drop that comment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and I want to thank you all for joining me today. All right, peace.